right, it is 5 o'clock. Good to see so many people out here this evening. We're excited to share. We've got a lot of our people who are there. One of the challenging things is moving 41 people around. Nobody's all at the same place at the same time. And we were pretty good in Peru, but now that we're back, I couldn't get all 41 people back here at one time. So the ones that are here, we're going to share some things, and then I want you guys that have questions, as we're sort of going through some of the things. If you just have something that you are just dying to ask, we'll have a time that you can ask some questions about things that we're going. So let's have a word of prayer, and we'll get started. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much again for this beautiful day. Thank you for this opportunity. And we pray that we will be blessed as we share some of our pictures and some of our stories of Peru. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So we'll have some of the different leaders. We had the four basic categories, that we were doing there, and that was doing the block for one church, painting a church, VBS, and medical. So we had leaders for each of those. So as we click through the slides here in a minute, we'll let each person have an opportunity to share a little bit about theirs. But the biggest thing was we had to get there. And that's some of these pictures, getting through these airports. One thing is we had to leave here on basically a Wednesday, get to Miami, fly out Thursday night, and we arrived in Lima about 7 or 8 o'clock on Thursday night. And then from there, we would fly a short hour and 20-minute flight. If we drove, it would be 30 hours. The transportation and the roads were awful. So a 30-hour drive or an hour and 20-minute flight, but we had to wait. Those flights start taking off the next morning. So you can imagine what that night looked like for us, sleeping in this airport. A few people were smart, like the Kim family, and they brought air mattresses. And that looked so nice. The rest of us slept on concrete. But with 41 people trying to bed down, and we had so much luggage. We just had luggage everywhere. We got bedded down, things were going good. And then here comes the staff of the airport saying, you can't be blocking this hallway. This isn't going to work. So I remember having to wake everybody up after they just got to sleep to pick up our bags and move. So that was interesting. Again, adaptability. Everyone had to be so adaptable on this trip because, again, nothing was easy. But they're working on getting the slideshow going here.
So we played this for church just because we didn't know the crowd that would turn out, but it looks like there's about as many people here tonight as there was in church. But it is the same photos that were on the slideshow, but we're kind of try to just advance them manually so we can talk about a few of them. And again, if you have questions that pop up during the slideshow that you have, save those for the end. And we're going to kind of start with our construction crowd. So if the people who worked construction want to kind of make their way up on the front row and you have a story or a thought to share, you can start kind of lining up. But we were just very blessed to work with an amazing group of people. 41 people, moving them from airport to hotel to buses. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of maneuvering and just a lot of logistics. But I just want to say, first off, that Maranatha is an amazing organization. They run a wonderful program. You know that your money is really well spent with them. And we had a really good team on the ground that we have been coordinating with now for, over a year.
2 years, year and a half.
Yeah, and they were just a great group of, mission-minded, mostly younger crowd of people who have just kind of given their life and their, years of service to Maranatha. And it was really fun to work with them, so. Is it going? You click.
I think, it's just moving through every 30 seconds, I think. Maybe not. Okay, we'll work on that. Yeah, so, and these guys are going to say a lot more about this, but there was zero waste. It was really exciting, and I'd heard from a lot of people who've been on different mission trips that sometimes you get there, the blocks aren't there. We're looking for this part, looking for that part, and that did not happen with this one. Everything worked like a fine oiled machine. So, Bryce, why don't you come up and say a few words?
Happy Sabbath, everybody. It's just a real privilege to go and help people in another country. I personally can't really carry on a conversation with a lot of them, but it's such a uplifting experience to work with the Maranatha guys and just to see their excitement. And when they got our group, they never know what kind of group they get, but to actually have a group of guys that a lot of us were in construction and able to work, you could just see their demeanor, relaxing a little bit. And I don't think they expected us to get quite as much done as we did, because where they wanted us to stop always got extended until we had it completely done. So that part was really neat. And for me, I shared a worship thought one morning, and I'll share it with you guys, but it really hit home to me as far as just being able to help people. And we don't have to go to another country to help people. We can help people right here in our community. So if I could take just a couple minutes, I'll read a paragraph. This is out of Thoughts from the Mount of Blessings, and it's really what our commission is, no matter where we're at. And it reads like this. And the work of benevolence, which is giving. It could be money, it could be your time, and a lot of us gave both to go on this mission trip. The work of benevolence is twice blessed. While he that gives to the needy blesses others, he himself is blessed in still a greater degree. The grace of Christ in the soul is developing traits of character that are the opposite of selfishness, traits that will refine, ennoble, and enrich the life. Acts of kindness performed in secret will bind hearts together and will draw them closer to the heart of Him, and Him is Christ, from whom every generous impulse springs. The little attentions, the small acts of love and self-sacrifice that flow out from the life as quietly as the fragrance from a flower, these constitute no small share of the blessing and happiness of life. And it will be found at last that the denial of self for the good and happiness of others, however humble and uncommanded here, is recognized in heaven as a token of our union with Him, the King of glory, who was rich, yet for our sake became poor. And, we need to live this each and every day, no matter what. But one final sentence, and I'll have these guys come up and talk about the construction part also. And it says, "It is as we give ourselves to God for the sacrifice of humanity that He gives Himself to us." So if we want to be filled, with the Holy Spirit, we need to serve. And what a privilege it was to go to Peru. We always go with intentions of helping others, but honestly, every mission trip I've been on, I was blessed tenfold from what I gave. But anyway, the construction site, we had some great guys, Jeremy and Richard, if you guys got something to share or anything. But we basically broke out. We had a team working on all four sides of the church building. I kind of led one side. Jeremy was on a side, Richard was on a side, and then Paul Witt was on another side. And it was just great to work with the young people, whoever was working with you that day. It was just a really good experience. To think that everybody gave their Christmas holiday and their time with family to serve. It was honestly the best Christmas ever. But I don't know if you guys got anything you want to add.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad to share with you. I'll share a little bit about the construction site, and I'll share a little bit about just the personal testimony or the witness that it was for me. A couple days before we left, I was still very nervous about going. I'd never been out of the country or been through customs like that, an airport, and some reason I was a nervous wreck about all that. But I even called Kelly, and I said, am I going to be okay? And she said, yeah, you're going to make it, and stuff. Because I know she travels a lot and stuff. So we got there, went through customs, showed them a passport, didn't get searched. I mean, they just act like I'm always the person that's in the line into the license check or something. They're like, oh, let's check you a little thoroughly. So I was like, that's the way I'm going to be when we get to customs or something. But it wasn't. We got off the airplane. We had a nice welcoming committee from the church there. And then about 30 minutes after being on the ground, I figured I was pretty tough and in shape. The altitude wouldn't affect me, but it sent me to the ground quick. We were at about between 12 and 13,000 feet, and a lot of the people have been taking elevation medicine. And I was like, I don't need to take that. I'll be fine. And within 30 minutes of being at that altitude, man, I was breathing hard, had a pounding headache, nauseous, throwing up. And I was like, man, if I have to be like this the whole time, I'm not going to be any help. But finally started taking some altitude medicine the Kims had, and I finally got into sleep. My head was just throbbing so bad. And Kathy Wilkie came and woke me up, and they were checking everybody's oxygen level all the time. And mine had dropped down to 66%. And Kathy's like, you need to get up and start moving around. I mean, you can't live like this. So got up and ate a little watermelon they had brought me from the cafeteria, and by the next morning I was good to go. But anyhow, so this, I worked every day at the construction site. Been around construction, but I'd never actually laid blocks before. And so we got there. I was like, I'll just shovel sand and help carry mortar and stuff. But one of the Maranatha workers pointed at me and said, we need this wall, need somebody on it. And Robert and Bryce had taken a wall, and it was the back wall of the church facing this way. And so I told Ethan, I said, like, how about me and you tackle that? So we went over there, and the Maranatha worker showed us what we needed to do, how much mud to put on the block, and you got the string set up. And you want to explain a little bit about the block work, how we did it?
Yeah, so we would interlock the block so it'd be more stable, and every 3 layers we would do a bond beam and just pour cement in it so it would last longer. And when we were working, I liked how all the Maranatha guys, if we needed help, they would come in and help us.
Yeah, so me and Ethan worked together every day at the construction site on the back wall of the church, and it was kind of nerve-wracking because we thought, well, we really need to make this wall look the best because everybody sitting in church is going to be staring at our wall. So right here behind us. So And then one day, Jonathan Wolf helped me on that wall, and Michael Wolf, and so that was the Wolford wall. And the Ethan wall, because we all put time on it. Anyhow, when they started, I was still getting kind of used to laying the block, and I saw him bring a welder out, and I saw one of the Maranatha guys welding, and I was like, oh, here's something I'm actually good at. And so that was fun to, I asked the Maranatha guy, I'd like to help you weld, and he said, oh, sure, hop right in there. So from there on out, I did a lot of the welding of the rebar and welding these brackets to the steel beams of the church. So as we went up, like Ethan said, every third course was poured with rebar, and then we welded these brackets onto the steel beams and then tied, wired all that together. So it was a very solid construction. It'll last forever. So anyhow, it was a lot of fun. And then I was talking about the third day I was there, I was talking to my dad on the phone. He said, we've got distant relatives that went to Peru years ago in the early 1900s. And so I did some research, and it was only about 30 to 40 minutes from where we were staying there at the college is where some of my ancestors, back in the 1918, they went to Lake Titicaca and to help start a mission there. And so it was neat to know that 5 and 6 generations later that we came back to the same area. And this, if you're ever looking for the mission story, it's called These Fords Still Run, and this is some of my ancestors that were Lake Titicaca, Peru area, and how they started a mission there. So anyhow, it was exciting, and thank you for all you guys' support and prayer, and thank you for all your encouragement. It was a lot of fun. Go ahead, Glenn. Yeah, we each had a wall. Every day we stayed on our same wall. A team. Robert led a team of a couple. You knew that you were going to be at the same level when you came together? Yep. We had strings to fall on a level. Yeah. They had these posts at every corner, and it worked out pretty good because my wall, we didn't have any windows to deal with, and I was the least experienced person, so we just had to me and Ethan and Jonathan Wolf just had to lay a straight line and follow the string, and Robert had windows, and Paul had windows to deal with, and Bryce had the main door, so it all worked out. Every day we'd come out about on the same course level as we went up. So.
Yeah, and I'll just add, Robert's going to come up in a second. The Maranatha workers, there were 4 guys that worked with us. And if we got something that much off, they would come over there and fix it. So they take great pride in what they do. It was not second-class workmanship. Another thing that I'll just point out, a little competition sometimes good. There was another mission group in the Sacred Valley about 4 or 5 hours from us. And so we had a foreman on our job, and they had a foreman on their job. So the 2 foremans would talk, and every day they'd say, what course are you at? Because as the courses were going up. And our guy, again, his name was Vladimir, and maybe we'll get some pictures of him later. He was the head guy there on our group, and he would come in the morning, and he'd look at his phone, and he'd go, 1, 2, 3, and he'd point where they were, and then we'd see where we were. And they didn't finish their church before the week was over, and we did. So it kept us all motivated, friendly competition in between the foremans, because again, like Bryce said, those guys were excited when we showed up, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about these guys. When they showed up and they knew what they were doing, the foremans got real excited, so we won that little competition.
In everything you do in life, there's a learning curve. You remember your first day at something and how uncomfortable you were, and later on it's just second nature. Or if you're ambidextrous and you can switch hands and use it either way, it makes a lot of difference. But if you can only use it one way, I lay block from left to right. And I thought about it before I got there. I told Bryce, I want to be on this wall, and I want to lay from this direction to that direction, because I'm more comfortable with it. But each day that we were out there, we got to work with somebody new. They got to work with somebody new. So you learned about each other. If we spent too much time talking, we were out of breath. So you couldn't micromanage your help, or you were huffing and puffing. So by after lunch, you had to shut up and let these young guys do their thing, which was good for us that were trying to tell them how to do it. I see the grin on their face. They realized it. It was hard work. You saw that picture over a couple of times that's earlier than this, is Jeremy standing on the corner. That's sometime in the afternoon of the first day. So by the end of the first day, the crew that we got, that we inherited and they inherited us, they go around doing this all the time, and you were concerned about how they do these corners. They had 4-story poles set up. They had them marked. They had clips on the corner, so you couldn't mess up. There was a mark there, and the gauges had to go up. But if one guy on one wall, and we're laying 4 walls, got ahead and got to the end of the corner and wanted to start his next course, he had to go help somebody finish, which is good. You have to eat humble pie. So sometimes you think, well, I'm going to beat these guys and I'll go help them, and then you got behind in something and they had to come help you finish. So it was nice, the camaraderie, that we were all going up at the same time. Nobody's really getting the glory of anything because we're helping each crew on each wall finish, whether it's handing them block or putting mortar in. But by the end of the first day, the crew that we had got knew they had gotten somebody good from the United States that would work together. You could tell from their mannerisms, the way they treated us, the smiles on their face, and it was fun to see Vladimir taking pictures and sending it to somebody else, and you didn't know who he was sending them to, but he was one-upping that other guy. And that encouraged us. The thing about it was every one of us was not immune to sickness. I think every one of us that were there were sick a day or two while we were there. I spent one day in bed in fetal position, come back a little more humble, and then by Thursday or Friday you think, wow, I'm 100%, I'm going to live, I'm going to make it. But it's a lot of fun to see those people who dedicated their time. They don't make a lot of money. To take their time off, they met us at the airport, they met us at our lodging that night. That cost them. Their potluck is putting a blanket out on the ground and pouring food in a pile on Sabbath. And they all take something out of that pile. That's humbling. They share. It looked like West Texas is a very unforgiving environment in that area to make a living. Although God put energy in the soil, everywhere you went there were a variety of potatoes growing and crops. Their herds were 6, 7, 8 animals that had a rope on them. Nobody had fences. They led them everywhere, staked them out, had to move them. So that was constantly looking at their flocks. You saw pictures this morning, you didn't know what that was about. Our driver was honking and those animals are in the road. They drive as third world countries with the horn as much as a steering wheel. And if you're a passenger, you don't have much control in that. And you do get used to it. Sometimes you come back with more than you take. We went to Lake Titicaca. We went to an island that they produce everything they use there. They spin their yarn, they color it. They were tickled to come out and show us their wares. They were very professional. Their looms looked like they were 1,000 years old, got handed down from each generation, I'm sure. But their work was immaculate. Their gardens were immaculate. Everything that they used was produced there on that island. And they put their wares out. Barbara bought several colorful things, and I looked, and she said, you need to get something. So I got this toboggan, but I didn't know how good it would be this week. I'm glad I was in Peru. A year later, we lost 5 or
Yeah,
6, and they got replaced.
So Maranatha told me when I first started talking to him, plan on 40% dropping. We had 3 people change. And then at the very last second, we had one guy hurt his back. So out of 41 people, we had, 37 of the originals went a year and a half later. So that was pretty. It showed that the people that wanted to go were in it. They were really wanting to. Earning their living, farming, and what they potatoes, quinoa, and herds, sheep, goats, things like that.
In block construction, and particularly when you're trying to design for earthquakes, this church has 4 bond beams around it, plus a couple more that are in the gables. So their intention is that church will never go down or no one will be hurt there. There was a church in Africa in the last year and a half that blew down. It killed 5 or 6 people, but according to Maranatha, they've not lost a structure. But the one that blew down in Africa, Maranatha went in and helped them rebuild it and brought it up to these standards. But when you look at a project like this, and maybe 4 people are used to handling a trowel and 41 go, and we split up, there are always things to do out there that aren't fun, that are just work or monotonous. Our crew was wonderful in that all of our people, our young people, everybody rotated around, did various tasks and made it easy. You didn't get stuck on the same thing for 5 or 6 days or hour after hour. Everybody rotated the responsibility and made it easy. And it got done 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon.
So let's talk VBS. Why don't the VBS... Oh, I'm sorry. You boy, Ivan. Yeah, get up here, Ivan. Ivan was not affected that I could tell by the elevation because he was making laps around us. It must be nice to be young.
No. I was just going to say that our tour guide, Richard, he wasn't supposed to be there for the first part of the trip, and he was there with us on the job site, helping us, putting up block, and just help interpreting for us. He was a really nice guy, the best guy. So that's all I had to say.
Painting. Painting is next. Bob, you want to come up? So there was a slide with a church and a scaffolding. If we could, that one. Right there. That's the picture.
Okay, as Jonathan had mentioned, I was kind of the liaison guy for the second church that we worked on, which was in a neighboring town 10 or 15 minutes away from Cabana, where were building the church. And there was a Maranatha superintendent and 2 other guys that were there when we arrived. And this was the second day of our actual construction time. We all worked at the construction site on Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, some of us broke off and went to this other church to paint. And those of you who have painted very much, I think you'll agree that the satisfaction about painting is seeing the change that you're making. Usually you're changing the color of a room or painting something that's brand new, and it takes its shape when you paint. When we first arrived at the painting site on Monday, we didn't get that satisfaction because we saw these 5-gallon buckets on the floor, and the superintendent said, "Sealer." Okay, so we're going to apply sealer. They opened up the can. It looked white. So I said, well, okay, we'll be able to see some progress here. This material, whatever it was, we were painting over stucco, When you put it on with either a roller or a brush, it disappeared. I compared it to spreading saliva on the wall. You could not tell what you had done unless you got in just the right light and say, did I do over there or not? It just melted away. The color completely disappeared. It was transparent. And so we applied sealer. And basically late in the day, he thrilled us with the comment as we were nearly done saying, 2 coats. So we applied 2 coats of sealer, and this is inside and outside. So we had a lot of surface area to cover, and we had willing volunteers, so yeah, we kept on going. And finally, on the second day, we got to actually do some painting, and we didn't know what the color scheme was going to be. I was thinking maybe the inside would be a light color and the outside would be a darker color or something. No, it was all one color. So we start painting, and it's going pretty well, and we think, okay, one more day we should be able to finish. And then the second day, he said, okay, we're going to do the second color now. And I thought, oh, all right. Well, they start putting masking tape on the outside of the building to paint that lower part a darker color. And I said, wow, I don't think that other paint is really dry yet that we put on. And so they put masking tape on, and we paint the lower color darker. And they come right around less than an hour later, and they start peeling the tape off, and the paint comes right with it. In a lot of places. And they took the time to try to patch that up, because that was real fine work, and they had to do that very slowly and carefully. But I thought, okay, they want to get this done as badly as we want to help them. The third day, we were trying to finish up, and of course, on the third day, he comes to us and says, 2 coats. So the entire building got 2 coats, inside and outside, after 2 coats of sealer previously to that. And that last day, it was a Wednesday, we're painting outside, and this is the back of the church that you're seeing. There are stairs going up in that little gap right here. You can kind of see a little edge of the stair right there. And then there's a rear door where you can come in on both sides. But that back wall, we were painting the second coat on that lower, darker colored strip. And I think Jonathan Wolf and Brooke Witt were helping me that day. And they're painting away with the rollers, and I'm down on the ground painting the very bottom edge. And you can see there are tarps laid up against that bottom edge because there's a sidewalk there, and we didn't want to splatter. And we'd been painting out there only a short time, and it started to rain. And I thought, oh boy, this is fresh paint. This is just all going to wash away. But they finished their rollers, and I was halfway down with the bottom edge, and I just kept going. And then we painted inside. And I really didn't want to come outside and look very quickly after that for fear of what had happened. Because it rained for the better part of an hour. And it was a solid sprinkle. It wasn't just a little mist. And when I came outside later, the sun started coming out, and I went out in the back of the church and I looked. Within a foot of the base of that wall, it was absolutely dry on that tarp. There was no water within a foot of that wall, so nothing got damaged. Everything we did was just fine. I don't think that was an accident. But it definitely was satisfying to finally see this thing take shape, and the guys on the Maranatha crew seemed very appreciative of having us there. I think they got a kick out of kind of just spoon-feeding us what had to be done and kind of surprising us with the 2 coats the way they did. But it was great to see this happen, and with a new pastor there now and a fresh look for this church, I think good things are going to happen in this town as well.
To add that the total cost of painting that church was $980. That included all the paint, 4 coats, and 2 Maranatha workers to do it inside and out. So I think we got a good value out of that. Bob had a lot of helpers that would come along, and I think Jonathan Wolf, he's lived his life wanting to be the MVP, most valuable player, but he was actually the most valuable painter. So we gave him the MVP award for coming and really helping Bob out, because Bob was would come back and be like, well, I'm not sure what we're doing the next day, because they kept adding things to it. All right. One other thing quickly on back to the construction, how we were talking about Maranatha is so organized. How many blocks, Robert, do you think were left over, or Bryce, from that job site? Maybe 10? Maybe 10 blocks left over from that entire job. So we had just plenty, zero waste. It's really neat how efficient they were, very, very little waste. So does the VBS team want to come up?
Come on up, guys. And happy Sabbath, church. Our VBS team, we had a core team, but we also had some of the boys in the construction wanted to come to experience VBS as well, same as painting. So I think most of the kids were able to come at least one day to VBS. And some of my VBS kids got to go also to the clinic in the afternoon. The way we did it was construction and painting were out there all day. VBS was in the morning. Original plan was for medical to be only in the afternoon, but when we saw how many people were wanting to come to the medical team, it pretty much became an all-day thing. A couple days, it was late. Construction, painting, VBS was back at the church, but medical was still seeing patients. They really didn't want to leave no one out of place. So the way we decided to do VBS was pretty much focusing a lot on our craft. Barbara was our craft lady. She literally came up with all the crafts. She made the crafts. We even give the kids a little soap that she made it at home from scratch. The kids absolutely loved. And we have more pictures on our Facebook page online. So if you guys have Facebook, make sure to like the Tryon Seventh-day Adventist Church. I posted a lot of pictures in there, and it shows the soaps. It shows a lot of the things. First day was Christmas Eve, so they told us that we could use the big gym originally, but because it was Christmas Eve and they were having their own celebration on where medical was going to be doing medical had to use the big gym. At first they told us we could share the space, but I felt like that would have not been a good idea. So there was a big town square, and you guys see a lot of the pictures are outside. That's where we did first day of VBS, and then we end up actually being there 2 other days. When we went back into the gym, it was big space, it was very echo, it was a little hard to be in there. But that's why we were most of the time outside, and it was a lot easier because at first we were told 3 hours for VBS. But after the first day, we realized that was way too long. The children would come and go. A lot of the children were coming by themselves, walking back home, coming back. They were kind of free to go back and forth whenever they wanted. So Christmas Eve, we had a lot of kids. We had 85 kids total. But like I said, it was celebration in town, so a lot of kids came from far away because they were coming for their celebration anyways. And that day, we were told we had a translator. No one in our group could speak Spanish except for Curtis. And then I'm Portuguese, so I can understand. I have talked to a lot of Spanish people, and when I try to talk to them, they a lot of times cannot really understand me. It's easier for me to understand the Spanish than for them to understand my Portuguese Spanish, you know. So they tell me in that morning that I have a translator. I go up to her, and I'm like, hey, how are you? I'm so excited, and she's just like, hi. And I'm like, oops, we have a problem here. Every time I try to talk to her, she was just very quiet, and I was like, okay. So we get out there, she's trying to translate, and the kids really can't hear her. Debbie has the idea to swap translators. So we get Cynthia, which is a Maranatha lady, to translate, and we can send Gabby, that was her name, to medical. Okay, good idea. But in a way, it wasn't a good idea because Cynthia is a Maranatha leader, so she was being pulled everywhere. And we sent Cynthia over to do a translate for the craft, which was inside in the gym, and she never came back. So now we have a problem. We have 85 children, we have parents, and all kinds of people there. The children are starting to get a little bit more comfortable with our girls, so they want to talk to them, and there's no translator. And I have heard this testimonies many times where you go to a different country, you preach in English, but the people sitting down can understand what you're saying. Or all of a sudden you're talking the language. And to be honest with you, and like Jonathan said this morning, this is all for the glory of God. And every time I think about what happened that morning, I almost feel so unworthy to even think that God could use me, use us in that kind of way. Because when I started speaking, I said, I'll have to do all the talking. And I know a little Spanish here and there. When I started speaking, the children understood every single thing that was coming out of my mouth. We didn't have a translator. And then they followed direction. They could understand it. And then at the end where the girls were just playing and everybody was like, Sarah, this lady wants to say something to me. What is she saying? And the girls would come, Sarah, these kids want to say something. I could understand, and they could understand me. And Portuguese and Spanish can be different. So I truly believe that God allowed in that moment for us to understand one another. And I praise the Lord for that. And throughout the week, I was able to speak and talk because medical really needed translators. So I was able to be like, hey, only give me one translator, which then ended up being Kurt Watkins. He came and worked with us the entire time, and that was a huge, huge blessing. All right, so now I'm going to let everybody have a chance to talk.
Can you tell what I learned in Peru? I love color. Those ladies were so colorful. And along with their colorfulness, you could see smiles. So color means happiness, right? Okay, when you see me in color, that means happy. These ladies were wonderful. These children were wonderful. But mostly, I want to talk about our kids. Our kids were wonderful. Our kids gave up Christmas. You know, they gave up a big deal here at home to be on this trip. And one particular highlight, Stevie. He didn't have parents there to kind of keep him going and go to for all his issues, but Stevie was always smiling. He was always showing manners, and he was always working. I tell you what, I learned a lot about our kids. Our kids love the Lord, and our kids just gave up so much. Thank each one of these kids, because to give up Christmas, that was a big deal.
Well, I helped with VBS, and it was great. It was fun to get to know the kids. The first day there's a lot of people in town, a lot of action going on because of the Christmas celebration, and all the kids that came out. But then as you were there at each day, you would be like, oh, and you started recognizing the kids, and they're just so sweet, and they want to talk to you so bad, and I really wish I knew how to speak Spanish. But thanks to Sarah, she was able to interpret for us a lot. And then Kurt Watkins, he was great, very enthusiastic, and just worked really well with the kids. One of the, I think there was one picture up that showed the kids with an ice cream cone. And one lady that went to the Cabana Church, her mother had like an ice cream shop. And so I think that was like the second day. That lady right there helping with the plaid coat. So her little daughter was there. Her name was Naomi. She was just precious. She was doted upon all week. But she would come and Kurt was like, we need some ice cream. Where do we sell ice cream? And then she was there for VBS, and she's like, my mom sells ice cream. So she would come and bring ice cream, and the kids loved that, of course, and it was great. And then she got to make extra money. She was a single parent. She was 17 years old, and she had a 2-year-old, and so it was a good way for her to make some extra money, and for the kids to have a little treat. So that was fun. But I think one of the biggest things was so fun as the days went on was we would drive the big bus into town, and the bus would just barely fit into town. Sometimes he's like honking at people, and they'd have to move their cars and to make it into where we were going. And so you would see the kids start appearing. They'd pop out this door and come running down this street, and they were so excited, to see us every day. And I just hope that part of what we did helps them to be in heaven, and we can see them someday again.
All right, so first I'd like to make a big thanks to 3 individuals. A big thanks to God, a big thanks to Mr. Jonathan, and a big thanks to Jeff Wilkie. Without all 3 of those people, this trip wouldn't have been possible for me, and I'm really thankful I got to go on this trip. And adding on to that ice cream, for the first part of the week, they said not to get any. But it was like really hot, and the ice cream just looked more and more tempting every day. And so just one day they were like, you can try getting it. You might get sick from it, you might not. And I was like, I'm willing to take that risk. Yeah. So I went and got some ice cream. They gave us some charcoal just in case. That helped. And the ice cream was really good. It was refreshing. It made that day better than it already was, and it was a good day. But yeah, it was a good trip.
So basically, my favorite part is when I went to VBS, I really didn't do anything besides play soccer. I basically only played soccer every day.
So I didn't work VBS every single day, but the days I did work, I helped out with like soccer and like helped Mr. Rees with like his presentations and stuff, like teaching the kids how to like be healthier and that kind of stuff. It was really fun.
So one interesting thing, these girls have some things to say, but we sort of broke our day up. So the VBS team would go in the morning and do VBS, and then in the afternoon they come and work on the job site, or vice versa. And then the medical would be in the afternoon. Medical pretty much ran all day, but the kids got a chance to do all the different things, so that was pretty cool. All right, ladies.
So me and Victoria both made like ourselves a friend, and it was just really fun like playing with them and trying to communicate with them as much as we could, and they were just really sweet kids.
And the last day we got to be with them, we invited them to the church, and the friend that I made, she gave me a note that said, "I love you very much, hope you have safe travels back."
Okay, so going into this trip, most of you guys know that like I already dorm at Pisgah, so like having to go like in a dorm for a whole nother week, that kind of didn't really sound like appealing to me. But like when I got there, I was just like, okay. But the moment that I saw all those kids at the VBS, like it was like an instant heart change. Like those kids were so sweet. Like anytime we gave them like a snack or something, they always would offer it like to us. And like all the little like friends that I would make, like they were so cute. And like I remember this one day, like all these girls were putting like flowers in my braids, and it was just like really heartwarming. And like there was this one girl, and she could speak like a tiny bit of English. And like I'm taking Spanish class in school, so like we could speak like a little bit to each other. And like I found out she liked sports and stuff like I do, so I guess like from then on she always tried to like hang out with me. And like I just really miss the kids there, and I hope I can see them again one day.
So I helped with games a bunch at VBS, and I thought it was really cool that like even though like we couldn't speak the language, like we could still like connect and like play together, and they were just like really sweet, and they'd always like give you stuff, and yeah, I just thought it was a cool connection. So at VBS, I helped a lot with crafts, and it was just really neat to see like how they had like nothing, but they always wanted to give what they had to us. So like, for instance, like one day we like gave them just like paper and crayons to like draw, and they like worked really hard on it and stuff, and then as soon as they were done, like they didn't want to bring it back with them, they wanted to give it to us. So yeah, it was really cool. Got like really close with some little kids and stuff. So yeah, I just really want to see them again someday, so I hope we get to do that.
So stay up. I want to ask you guys a couple of questions. One thing that safety was a big deal for us. Just bringing all of these people with human trafficking and the things that were going on there. And so we talked to the kids a lot about that. But that little girl, Naomi, she was like the mascot for that church. She was at all of their greetings, and she was there. And I was really concerned one of these girls was going to try to traffic her back here, because it was discussed, and they were talking, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could try. And I was like, oh, girls, we can't do that. But it was really fun seeing them. And Stevie got to participate in a David and Goliath charade, and obviously he was Goliath there. But so just to ask you guys, we haven't talked about our lodging at all. Where we stayed in the dorm, was it nice and warm and cozy, or what was the deal there? Was that, were you warm when you were in there? A little bit cold? We had nice blankets. But let's talk about the shower and bathroom situation. How did that work? Juliana, what happened? Talk about the showers a little bit. Explain what could happen in there.
So most showers like weren't cold, but eventually they weren't hot, but eventually somebody figured out that if you only turn like the knob a little bit, you can get hot water for like a couple minutes until somebody else turns on the shower. But yeah, so randomly when you're showering, the water would just shock you. And for those who are tall, whenever you would put your hands by like the top of like wherever the water comes out of, like you would just like get shocked. And like I got shocked one time and like my whole arm was like burning in the shower. So it wasn't really like nice to get a shower. And I guess whenever you didn't really sweat that day, I guess you just didn't shower because it was miserable.
Yeah, so these heating elements, it's not a water heater. There's a little heating element run off of a 220 right there, and the water comes through it. And there's electrical tape and different things. And so there's water, and then there's metal. And I remember one evening I was in a shower, and my friend Michael Wolf was in another shower beside me, and he's a bit taller. Well, he's washing, and all of a sudden, I hear, my head! And he's taller, and the electrical current, we reached out and grabbed him, and he's literally being shocked in that shower. And so I would wear flip-flops to try to get a little rubber, and you would turn them on real fast before you got wet. But then if you needed to adjust them, that's usually when you got shocked. And you never, after you did it once, I forget, somebody got shocked really good because they went up to adjust the head. Aubrey and Levi. Yes, and Aubrey's arm was, because they went to adjust the head, and we learned that. But then once your shower was done, if you stayed away, kept your head down, but it was turning them off because you had to touch that metal again. And we sort of mentioned it, like, just randomly to some of the Maranatha people, and they were like, yeah, it's a girls' dorm. I mean, and I will say this, that university, they said in Peru, is equivalent to like Harvard or Yale in America. It was the best of the best, and you still got shocked in the showers. But that was a good experience. Did someone want to share sort of what we ate mostly, or how the meals went? Stevie, you want to talk about that a little bit? Each day, sort of our routine, what we would do for food?
So it was kind of like a cafeteria, 3 square meals a day thing, and every meal had to have potatoes. They cooked it in a variety of different ways, but I had to have potatoes, most of the time quinoa. Sometimes we got like eggs and then just like a bunch of vegetables. And we had some stew someday, and that was pretty good. But eventually, some of the food got a little old, but it was still good. It was hearty. It filled you up. It kept you going. That's all that matters.
So what is their delicacy in Peru? Like when you're driving around, like if you want something like a really good food, what would we see on the side of the road?
Guinea pig, alpaca. They were cooking alpaca in the city square while we were doing VBS like a couple of the days. I thought it smelled really good, and then I found out what it was, and I was like, oh. I ended up trying alpaca later on in the trip. It actually isn't that bad, but.
Yeah, so the guinea pigs on the stick, that was pretty rough. They would just stick it through and cook it as is, and they ate everything. They said there's one little bone in the brain that you spit in your drink, and then you drink the drink, and it's supposed to do something with that. But they literally ate all of the guinea pig, besides the skin. They said 1 hour over a fire, turning it, and they would just have them stuck up. There'd be 10, 12 here, 10, people would go by their stick and eat the guinea pig off of it. We did have the opportunity to go to a market one day, and it was sort of towards the end. Some of us were fighting off. He had been throwing up all morning. Levi has been throwing up, and our guide brought us in the local meat market. That was, Barbara, what do you think?
No, I held my hand over my eyes as I walked.
Yeah.
The smell, oh my goodness.
It was bad.
I wanted to throw up just from smelling.
It was bad, and our tour guide, he's walking backwards saying, yeah, we eat this, and he's touching the meats, and there's intestines hanging, and the smell. I mean, it was literally like blinders. Yeah. Look forward and don't look. No. It was really, really rough. Anything else you guys want to share? Bathroom situation. Nobody wants to talk about the bathrooms? All right. Are we ready for the medical group to talk a little bit? Yes.
I saw on the first pictures that y'all had that they all had on the big bucket hats with the wide rims. Oh, yeah. And I was wondering, why were y'all putting those on? I know you had to have hard hats on, but I thought they're getting some sun damage, even though it is cold over there. Oh, well, it was kind of hard to determine whether or not it was cold or hot because y'all were short sleeves sometimes, and they were all.
Yes. It was cold at night, and it would be cold in the day, but the elevation was so high. We were so close to the sun. We were frying. I mean, we got the worst sunburns. Some of these boys on their backs and necks, and girls. It was very intense, I should say. But it would warm up maybe 70 in the day probably. So, but then when the sun started going down, and it got dark really early, by 5:30 it was like completely dark. So when that sun, we would get up early. Our routine was we would get up and have breakfast at 6:15 every morning, and then we would try to be done with breakfast and on the bus by 7, and then going to work, and then we would end at 5, and then we would get back and it would be pretty much dark. But yeah, it was a challenge, that elevation, because at that, a thunderstorm come through and you'd be cold, but every night was cold. No insulation in our thing. Like there was one little tile, so we looked up in the attic, no insulation. The windows were really thin, but they had big, huge blankets. So you would stay warm at night, but you had to be in those blankets in your bunk bed.
So Kathy and I have gone on several Maranatha mission trips, but we have never had the opportunity to run a health clinic. So every person that did health clinic, it was our first experience running something like that. We had us two, and then Michael Wolf helped us a couple days, and then he wanted to do some construction too. And we had Dr. Kim and Tanya. and Mrs. Kim helped us. And then we had an array of kids who would come, some in the morning, some in the afternoon, who were very critical in running our production. We had some stations. We would triage every patient. Then they would get in a line, and they lined up at like 8:30 in the morning, and the lines would be really long. And we would just give them, we had triage papers, we would number them. And the first day we didn't really know how long things would take, and we stayed hours later after everyone else had gone home because we just wanted to see everybody who came. I mean, they sat there for 8 hours to be seen by the doctor. And Dr. Kim saw everybody, and then they would go to the doctor, and then we would give them like an array of things. So it was really neat that, you know, we couldn't always help everyone with every concern and problem that they had, but everyone went home with some literature, some hygiene products, and they mentioned how like severe the climate and weather was there. It was just amazing. These people had the most leathered skin, like sticking their fingers to get a blood sugar was like sometimes we just had to, our little glucometers were not working, so we just pretty much had to take the little needle and just jab it in straight because it was not, the pressure from the glucometer was not good enough to get through the skin. And they had simple things like they were dehydrated. Everyone had headaches and backaches because the sun is so intense. They don't wear sunglasses. You know, they do wear hats, but they're outside working in the potato fields all day, and they're bending over, they're doing manual labor, so a lot of back pain, muscle pain. And it was just amazing. Like, they would just sit there all day, no food, no water sometimes, and they were just so grateful because their access to care is so limited. Most of them said, we don't go to a doctor. If the hospital was a drive, they just didn't go, and or they couldn't afford it. So it was just really eye-opening and really sobering, and it was a huge blessing just to be able to touch them, to pray with them, to give them hugs, and just kind of that care that they wanted. And then we had a whole nother, like we would triage one line, and then a whole nother line would come just for glasses. And some of the boys, like Stevie and Noah Reeves, they worked that station with Pastor Solomon. So we gave so many glasses out. We brought some, and then we were blessed to have boxes of glasses left for us from previous groups. So hundreds of people got glasses. And then, you know, we gave medicine. We bought a couple $1,000s worth of medicine, and it went very far. Our money is like 3 times more valuable than their dollar. So our dollar is 3.67 to theirs, so we could make it go a long ways. And we made a lot of stops back to pharmacies knowing, oh, we needed this, we get more of that. And it was just amazing. And I'll let Kathy maybe share a story or two, and then the kids.
I've done a lot of mission trips, and like Sarah said, never been able to do medical. And I think I had the best station in the whole thing, because after they visited with the Kims and got their diagnosis, then they would come to see the pharmacy. And I just want to give a huge shout out to our interpreters. We couldn't function without them. And we had Pastor Solomon, who was there and worked hard every single day doing eyeglass stuff. We had another interpreter that had ridden a bus for 18 hours just to come and help us on his own dollar. He wasn't being paid to do it. Another whole family, we coincidentally met the dad and their little boy Fabio on a hike our first Sabbath afternoon there, and they just decided to spend their whole Christmas vacation and break coming. And so the mom interpreted, the daughter interpreted. We couldn't have seen near as many patients without our interpreters. But at my station, I got to the privilege of praying with these people. And of course, I had to go through the interpreter, but they would say, oh, your prayer is better. They want you to pray. So we would end up praying even though everything had to go through the interpreter. And I would ask my interpreter to ask each patient, did they want prayer? And and they all did. I think I only had one person turn me down the whole time, and what their specific prayer requests were. And most of them were very general, for my health, for my family, but sometimes you would get really personal. One woman said, please pray for me because my husband, I'm an Adventist, but my husband is not, and he gets drunk, and when he comes home drunk, he beats me up. Another woman just heartbroken, sharing how her husband had been unfaithful to her. And you can understand in this poverty-stricken, we have options. You know, if somebody's unfaithful to us, well, okay, that's heartbreaking. But for her, it's devastating on a financial and just a survival level as well. So it was neat to hear some of their stories. There was the one lady, and Sarah can tell more about it, and I'll let Stevie and Juliana can talk about. Juliana can talk about triage, and you can talk about the eyeglasses. But there was the one lady who came in, and what was her oxygen level when she checked in?
Okay, so back to the elevation thing, 92 to 100 is normal. That's what hopefully all of us in this room are. I think I triaged out of hundreds of patients. Maybe 3 were 90 or above. Everyone walks around there chronically oxygen deprived. Mid-80s, you know, they feel probably pretty good at 88, and we'd be running somebody to the ER, you know, if there's a child or something at 88%. She was in the low 80s. She, you know, rails, wheezing, just really not doing well. We tried so hard to convince her to go to the hospital. George was very, you know, pointed with her saying, you know, you may not live. And she said, no, I can't go. I don't have family. I can't afford it. We offered to get her a motorcycle ride or a taxi, and she just wouldn't go. And so we prayed with her. We gave her food. We got an antibiotic in her on the spot and gave her food and water. And then she just took off through the evening, and she was going to walk home. And I mean, it's just amazing to see how these people live and survive, really. And they're happy. They're so thankful, you know.
They were 3-hour walk, she said it was for her to get there that day with her oxygen. You know, she's got probably pneumonia, severe pneumonia that would put us in the hospital, and she walked three hours to get there and 3 hours back. The ear lavage were huge. You want to tell about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you got involved
Yeah,
in
go.
that. No, go
Well,
for it.
I had lots of assistants that we trained on the spot, and Stevie was one of those kids willing to just do whatever. So tell about what was going on with that lady. Again, severe weather, wind, intense, you know, heat and all that, and they don't really know to clean their ears. I think they just have a ton of earwax that's embedded.
Yeah, so that was an eye-opening experience. She had 4 layers of earwax in her ear or something like that, and each layer was hard as a rock at first, and we had to keep squirting water in her ear to try and soften it up and pull it out, and whenever it did come out, it was not pleasant to see, but pleasant to see at the same time. At first it wasn't really working, but once we got all the way back in there and got most of it out, she eventually said that she could hear a lot better, and that made me feel a lot better. Than instead of wanting to throw up, I was actually really happy because she was smiling a lot, and she was like, I can hear again, this is great. And yeah, that was really nice to see. And I also helped with the eyeglasses.
That picture, that last picture of us.
Oh, yeah.
This probably took 30 minutes, and we'd just say, you know, can you handle more? And she yeah, let's go again. Because I could visualize more and more clogging. We'd get one layer, and then I'm like, oh, there's more chunks. It's huge, you know, but it took an intense amount of pressure and water, and it's not warm water because we don't have access to warm water. That's very, very uncomfortable. But she just kept saying, try again, try again. And we cleaned it. So it was neat. Juliana helped a lot with the triage station.
So back to the thing that Miss Sarah was saying about their skin being thick, I was doing their blood sugar, I would have to poke the needle into them, And like I was kind of scared to do it, but I remember this one patient, like I poked it all the way through, and like I gasped because like nothing came out. But like whenever I was like I did blood sugar on Phelan, and like I just had to like prick it like a tiny bit. But she, like Miss Sarah, had to come and like help me poke it again, and I thought that was interesting. And another thing is, all of them had like back pain because they all like work all day. And I also saw a lot of people's like pee because a lot of them had like some urinary stuff happening, and Miss Sarah always had to like do the samples for them, and there was just like cups of pee like lined up on the wall. So yeah, it was interesting to see.
It was primitive conditions, but we had to send most, I would say 75% of everyone there was walking around with a urinary tract infection, kidney infections, and then so if they said back pain, we wanted to rule out, was it kidney or was it muscle related? So we passed out so much Cipro, and we kept buying more Cipro, but we got to do a lot of education just on more water intake, less soda, but they don't always have access to water, and again, the intensity of the elements make them dehydrated. So I just want to give a huge shout out to the Kims. They were always I'll probably cry. The last people on the bus, but you just saw how much of a servant they are, and they always were giving, and they made it all the way home, and they were getting sick on the way home, because when you're the provider, you wait to get sick. And so all day long they would help, and then all evening long we would care for each other in our group, and they just gave and gave and gave.
Yes, they not only were working all day, they had the longest station in the clinic, and not only were they working the longest in the clinic, then when they would come back, they would be dealing with those of us that were sick. They just kept giving and kept giving.
Yes, we had a hard time finding pictures of Dr. Kim to put on the slideshow because he was in a room seeing patients. And he heard a lot of stories, and I wish they were here tonight, but they're out of town, of just the heartbreak, but the bit of hope that we could give them. One interesting thing I saw is Dr. Kim had been working all day, and I came in from somewhere, and he was cleaning up our floor where one of our people had thrown up on the floor. And it's like, that's a servant. He was our doctor, and he was on his hands and knees cleaning up throw up from one of us. I won't say who, but that was an incredible thing. And again, any element that we had, we would go to them, and they would help us with it. So huge thing for the VBS, the VBS, but the medical here, they can't show a church that they built, but they were intimately involved with the people more than any of us. One comment that I think I'd heard that the lady said, she hadn't been able to hear for about 2 years until they cleaned her ears out, and she walked away hearing. So it was such an incredible experience. And the other thing, how they're saying they would wait in line, but they had their animals maybe in the field. Everybody'd have to bring in their animals, and then they would have to leave because they couldn't get in line in time, and then hopefully come back the next day. But it was literally like I imagined when Jesus was healing, going through the towns, and people were lined up just wanting to get closer to him to get that, and these people were able to give that help. So it was definitely life-changing, a good experience. Pop quiz, how many varieties of potatoes do you think they grow in Peru? 300? Who said that? Oh man, you're close. Just add one more zero. 3,000, over 3,000 varieties of potatoes. And we would eat about 4 varieties a meal. There would be different types of potatoes. Yes. a lot of potatoes there. Another thing I wanted to point out today in the sermon, but I didn't have time, is when we saw our church members and the people there, and you saw the peace and the joy on their faces, and then you saw the other people that didn't have the hope, it was a big difference. The Incas, a lot of superstition, a lot of fears. I'll tell a quick story. The first Sabbath, there was this big mountain. We were at 12,500 feet at the university level. There was a mountain behind us, and we looked at that mountain and we said, we've got to get to the top of it. There's nothing there but just a mountain, and we could see the ruins from years past, and we wanted to hike up that mountain so bad. So the first Sabbath, which has been there a day, we took off that afternoon, a few of us, and made it about halfway. But breathing was really challenging. Our heads were hurting. There's some weird stuff going on. So we didn't make it the first day. But we said, next Sabbath, we're going to make it. So we had to get to the top of that mountain. And so the next Sabbath, a big group of us took off, and we made it. And it was nearly 14,000 feet by the time we got to the top of it, just climbing up. It wasn't super, technical, but just working a good, solid elevation. But when we got to the top, we took pictures. We could see the city of Juliaca. It has over 1 million people in it. We could see a lot. But then way off in the distance, we saw lightning, and we could see there was a storm coming. So I was like, we got to get down. I mean, we're 14,000 feet, and most of the kids were carrying metal water bottles. And I was like, this is not good as we see that storm starting to come. So I actually sort of bolted with Sarah and Leah and I think Victoria or Amy, somebody, and we take off down the side and the rest of the group. But someone saw something and they went to examine it, and it was an altar. And as they got closer, checking it out, it was still warm. It still had something burning. There were coals. Someone had just been there, and then they got closer, and there was blood everywhere. And so someone had just been doing a sacrifice up there on that mountain. So we asked our Peruvian friends, we said, what's the deal with that? What were they sacrificing to? And they said, to the devil, possibly, to the gods, to the weather, more rain, less rain. And then we said, well, what would they be sacrificing? And what was the order that the person told us when we said, what could they have been sacrificing there?
The first thing she said was people. And then, we saw some bones. They were small bones, but, it could be sheep as well or rabbits. So.
Yeah, so literally we're here in a spot where this group has the peace that passes all understanding and joy and peace in their heart. And then you have this other group here that's literally still just like in old times. So we read about the sacrificing even of humans to appease the gods or whatever it was for. So it was a real contrast. It was a real way for us to see. And wrapping up here, and if we have a couple of questions, I just wanted to point out, they mentioned the translators. The translators, it was unbelievable how they just came and gave. And this family that Kathy mentioned, on our first hike, we met her husband and son. They came to our group worship that last night, and the lady just cried, just very emotional, and said, you guys gave me the best Christmas we've ever had. And we're thinking, the best Christmas, their whole break, they got up and were eating breakfast with us at 6:15 in the morning, worked all day, and they would come to our worships at 8:30 at night. And she said, it just, we were all crying. And then each of them would say something about the impact that our group had on them. So I just want to say it was powerful. It was amazing. We came back so connected. If I had the opportunity to go on another mission trip, I would want to go with all 40 of those people. And that was the purpose of this trip, for our church to bond, for our church to be connected, and it did it for us. So we're very grateful. So, yes. Our pastor had 28 churches in his district. 28 churches. Yes.
Is that the pastor who has a friend who has a motorcycle?
Yes, the elder has a motorcycle. And does anybody ride motorcycles here? Yep, so you'd be bringing Pastor Grant. to visit me or someone around because I saw them. Like we were driving down the road in a taxi. Sarah and I had gone to do some business in town with our Maranatha lady, and she's, oh, there's the pastor. He's riding on the back of a little tiny motorcycle with the elder with their orange suit on going out visiting people.
If he had a motorcycle, could he drive?
Well, we thought a lot about that. We thought a lot about that, of helping, how we could help them get around. Roger?
If you were going back again, would you do anything different?
Oof. We learned some stuff, logistics, but not really. I mean, things went so well. I mean, it's just, and it was a God thing because we'd never been. And that's another interesting thing. The numbers of Maranatha volunteers, over half of them that went this year were first-time volunteers. Over half of our group had never been on a Maranatha trip. So it was definitely, we learned as we went. But yeah, I don't think any of us had a lot of regrets of anything that happened. Or Robert?
You want to make a major impact in somebody's life, Solomon needs a vehicle. He has a huge amount of churches. He's single. He has to walk a kilometer to even use his phone or his laptop. He said, I thought about a motorcycle, and that's $3,500. And then he showed us a picture of his best friend beside the road with a broken vehicle at Mountain Pass. He said, if I buy a motorcycle and I'm broke down, I'll have to sleep out there on the mountain with my motorcycle. So he said, $7,000 in our economy will buy a car. And if it breaks, I can sleep in it.
Yes.
That's their dedication.
It is. Like I was saying, this guy has 18 churches. And I will say from a financial standpoint, we did the blocks that you all donated the money for, but we had some excess when we were done. And so we got in touch with Maranatha about the windows and the doors. And we have enough money left over that we're going to supply the windows and doors because we got the block stuff, but now it's sort of a wind tunnel. The wind blows and it could come through. So our money's going to go back. We're talking to them about the stucco and the painting because we want that church to be done. That was another exciting part is nothing ever gets finished in Peru. Every building you saw was not finished. And we got a lot of lookers when those walls started going up. And people would stop. I mean, they'd stop the vehicle, stop the motorcycle, and just sit and watch us work. And to see that church all go up, and we're going to put windows and doors, it's like, wow, what's up with this place? And our money does go far. The boys, they really enjoyed it because they could go down the street. They found some little store. We tell them if they stayed in a group, they could go. They'd slip away from the job site and go buy colas and chips and candy bars. And they're like, Dad, we can buy, you didn't drink Coca-Cola there. It's called Inca Cola. And they could buy a 20-ounce cola for 30 cents. So they went down there with a few dollars, and it went a long ways. They were able to really buy stuff. So that was fun. Yes? Yes, absolutely. George worked so hard. There wasn't enough of George to go around because, that line was so big. Another doctor would have been wonderful. But it was neat how the medical team, they literally set it up like a doctor's office. I mean, they were very efficient. They were just running through there. So that was really exciting. Sarah?
I have two questions from, where's the microphone? It's from Zoom. There's two questions from Zoom. One is the hats that the women wore in Peru, did they have a significance other than protection? I don't know. I think it's just their traditional style. They did all wear hats, long sleeves, pants. The children, as you can see, that's how they wear all the time. And we learned, because after the first day we were burned, we were like, all right, we need long sleeves. We did not expect to be that hot. When we went, they told us low 60s, and then it ended up being high 70s high 60s, 70, with the sun out. So it did get hot. So we have Stevie. They want to hear Stevie talking about the eyeglass experience. I guess he didn't get to talk about that, but here.
All right, so yeah, with the eyeglasses, there'd be like a long line. We'd call them up to the chairs, and we'd ask them if they could read a sign that was on the back wall. And if they couldn't read it, then that meant that they probably needed prescription glasses, because we were dishing out reading glasses. And if they could read it, though, then we'd pull out the paper and run a little test, see how far down the line they could go reading the smaller and smaller letters. And we'd have to find out where they couldn't read and where it was blurry, and then we'd have to go find the glasses and give them different pairs at different sizes for them to try to read. And once they said that it was all clear and stuff and they could read it all fine, then we'd just give them the glasses, clean them, and give them like a little gift and send them on their way after prayer. And it's a really good thing we had translators there, though, because it would not have, the eyeglass station wouldn't have functioned without them, because there's a lot of words that I did not know in Spanish that would have been needed to know.
Yes,
that I
a
learned.
big thank you to the translators that helped us. One other quick thing that Ivan there mentioned, Richard. So we hired a tour company to bring us on a little trip afterwards to see Machu Picchu and to see some things. And non-Adventist company, well, he decided that he and his wife would like to join us for the whole time. And so they met us at Lima Airport. They brought us through everything. And then they came and worked with us every day, translating for us, laying blocks, carrying blocks. His wife, Lucy, was painting one day with us. She was at the VBS every day. And this guy gives tours to people from all over the world. And they'd come sit with us at our worships at night. And again, towards the end, he said, I need some meat, number one, because he wasn't vegetarian. He'd been eating with us the whole time. But he said, I've never had a group like this. He's like, this is different than a vacation. And he was very touched, and we were very touched by him. Again, the people, we hit some lows there. I mean, there were some nights it was just like, oh my goodness, this is... another day. I mean, we were tired. We were sick. We were cold. And Christmas Eve, a guy came to the cafeteria and he said, can we come and give you guys like a little gift? And I said, sure. And he said 8:30, come. That's where we met in our dorm there. So we were sitting there. It was Christmas Eve. Some of the kids were at that point were like, oh man, this is Christmas. This does not feel like Christmas at all here. And so we were having worship, and he comes and he brings his wife and a few people, and they sort of wait in the hallway. And then I said, all right, come in. Well, they had a speaker, and they busted in there, and they were playing, what song was it? Yes, jamming it on that speaker. And they started running circles and going circles around and waving, and just brought the Christmas spirit to us and said, Merry Christmas. And then they had speeches, and then they gave us all a little loaf of bread or something to all of us. And then they said, we want to play with you guys. We want to do stuff with you guys. They were from the university. And so the next day, which was Christmas Day, we got off work a couple hours early, and we came and played a soccer game against them. And then we played basketball against them. Who won the soccer, Levi? Was it us or them? Was it them? I thought it was. I think we won basketball, though, right? And then we played volleyball, and they just wanted to play with us. So it was so fun just seeing us integrate, just playing and just having a good time, and that was a lot of fun for Christmas, just to do something a little different. Again, we could have possibly won, but the elevation, they could outdo us on that. So that was... Yeah, not volleyball. They beat us. We played so many games of volleyball against them, and I think they play that a lot in the winter, where they're inside and they can play. They were really good at volleyball. We didn't have a chance there. But anyway, any more questions?
One last question I just got on my phone. Can we raise the money for the car for Pastor Solomon? We've talked about it, and Debbie Owens, it would be how to get the money to them. It's the question, but we are definitely have talked among ourselves that would be something we would like to do for him.
Yes. And I tell you this, Pastor Solomon, he saw that we had so many different things going, and the medical needed translators. So he literally calls a friend of his in Bolivia, and this is like maybe a Sabbath, and his friend was getting ready for his holiday and to spend it with his parents, and he said, "These people need help. Will you come?" Well, this kid had spent his money. He had no money because he had spent it on Christmas presents, and he said, "Yeah, I'll come." And somehow he got the few dollars for buses. What's that?
Right after Solomon asked him, I was talking to him, and he said a friend called and said, "I've got some money that I owe you. I want to give it to you." And he said within 45 minutes of getting the call, he was on a bus headed to interpret for us.
The only thing he forgot was his toothbrush and a towel. And when we talk about an 18-hour trip in a bus, it's not like us that can just get a bus and just drive from here. It's like one comes to this town, then they have to get out. They have to wait. They have to try to find a ride from this town, then to the next town. It's a huge, and this guy, not knowing any of us, he just left it all. He said his mother was angry at him because he was supposed to spend Christmas, and he got on that bus, and he came, and he worked with us the entire time translating for us. And we were able to give those guys a little bit of money just to get them back home, because, again, to get buses to get back.
He sent me, I had messaged him once since we were back, and he says, one sentence, that was in this message he sent back was, "I am still processing how blessed and guided by God that week was."
Yes, so it was a wonderful experience. So we will close. Yes?
Do you think the interactions with these people is why your trip last year got canceled? Do you have any sense about why? Maybe we won't know until we get to heaven, but I'm just curious if you had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, we don't know. From what I was saying in the sermon today, Solomon was discouraged and about ready to quit the ministry. Well, he probably wouldn't have come last year. We don't know if Richard and Lucy, the tour operators, they weren't planning to be with us the first time. They were going to send their employees to just give us the tour. Well, they came with us. So we don't know, but the mayor that we had the interactions with, we did feel a very strong spirit that God's Spirit was there, and that was undeniable. Yes. We didn't get any rain until we started the vacation end of our trip. And that was incredible because we could work. We had to do this work. So, yes.
I just wanted to say a big thank you to Debbie Owens. She didn't want to get up and say something, but she has managed the money end of this, and it has been a lot of work. Wiring a lot of money overseas, keeping all the accounts current and up to date, and it was a huge undertaking, and I just want to give a shout out to how good she did for that.
Huge for Debbie. All of this money, all of these accounts, working all of this stuff through, and we had to carry the cash down there to pay for things. We're smuggling money here and there to not get, it stolen, to be there. And Debbie Owens was one of the only people that didn't get sick. None, right? None. So
I just wanted to say Richard and Lucy had 3 kids. They spent their Christmas and New Year's with us, but they had 3 kids. Their youngest one was 7 years old. They left their kids at home by themselves for 2 weeks. to spend their time with us. They were just really awesome.
Yeah, and they were sleeping in the dorm. They only got one tiny bed to share. We at least had our own beds. I mean, they were just in the trenches with us for 2 solid weeks. But that's what we saw from everyone. They saw what we were doing and they just wanted to join. It was contagious. So anyway, that's it. That was Peru.
One last thing on Richard and Lucy. How we kind of got in touch with them was from Arthur Korn that lives here. Some of you guys may know him. Arthur had spent many years in Peru, but anyway, we got in touch with Richard and Lucy through him. I think it's a God thing.
Yes.
You know, that all this came together like it did.
Let's close with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, it's with happy hearts that we have spent this time together just remembering how you bless this trip. And we pray for the people in Peru. We pray for every patient that came through our medical facility and the real struggles and trials and troubles that they had, that something we gave them, the literature, the prayers, the love, could help carry them forward. We're thankful for the church that we were able to build, and then the connection that everyone knew that that's the church. That's why we were there, to build this church and do the medical and the VBS and the kids, and how we brought the kids all to the church on a Sabbath while we were there to make those connections, and the painting, and just all of the lives that we touched. But we just pray for all the people who touched us, and we pray that each person that went on that trip, our own spiritual journey and our own spirituality can be strengthened, and that we won't forget how you led us there. So I'm thankful for this church here in Tryon, this group of people who really came together to make all this happen, and the ones that gave, the prayers, the support. And we just want to say you're a good God, and that you brought us all home safely, physically as well. And that we just give you all the honor and the glory and the praise. So we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So we're going to meet over at the Morgan Center, whoever wants to have some food together and just talk. And thanks for coming out.